Welcome, Dr. Nikisha Floyd and Brittany Broder-Smith. Hi.
Awesome. So excited.
Hello.
Hello. Good. Hello in whatever time zone and whatever type of day it is, everyone.
Can y'all hear me? So great. Thank you. So hello, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Are we all ready to get started and jump right on in? Yes. All right. Okay.
Yes, we're good to go.
Okay. Awesome. Welcome to It Is Time for an Amazing Transformation. See what we did there? Centering racial justice in sex ed. It is an honor to be before you today. It is an honor to co-present with the Dr. Nikisha Floyd. I'm not quite exactly yet. I heard what LaCar said, but we got some time. Y'all got to give me some space to get there. But as LaCar said, yes, I am currently the Senior Program Manager of Health Equity Advocates for Youth. And we just actually completed our RISE training, which is an immersive training experience on this very topic that we're talking about today, which is racial justice in sex ed. I love this work. And as we all know, I'm sure you all recognize, this is not work that you do for a paycheck. Now, granted, free labor, we don't do that unless we choose to do that. However, I know that you did not get into this to become wealthy, but it's because you truly have a heart to see the lives of young people better. And it is an honor to be before you today. We can go ahead and go through Dr. Nikisha.
Yeah, so good afternoon or good evening, or again, whatever time zone you are joining us in. And I am so delighted to be here with you all today. I am the Associate Director for Racial Justice in Sex Ed with Advocates for Youth. And so I lead with having that public health lens to really look at sexuality, but specifically from a place of how it is and it is a great thing that we have in our schools, but how it could be better to make sure that we meet the needs of all young people. And so I'm very honored to be here, very excited about this presentation, but more so I'm very excited that you all are here to join in the conversation on how we create this amazing transformation in creating a sex education curriculum that meets the needs of all of our young people. Brittany?
Yes. So I would like us to start with a bit of an icebreaker. Many people who are familiar with me in different iterations or spaces of work. And if y'all know me, y'all know I love a good game. And so we're going to do a little icebreaker, which is really just a level setting. And we want to start first, before we get to that, understand that this keynote today, there's a couple things that we want you to leave with, right? We want you to be able to leave defining racial justice and how it relates to sex education. We want to understand that this amazing, for lack of a better word, this amazing program, which is AMAZE, that has brought us all here. We want to identify how the videos that they have can expand and support the racial justice work in the classroom regarding sex ed, explaining how racial justice coincides with racial equity, and demonstrating the understanding of the racial justice online modules, which are another professional development arm or really offering that Advocates for Youth has created, and then being able to observe racial justice in sex ed via a sample virtual PD, which we will talk a little bit about more. So we're going to transition from there to our agenda. We're talking about some important things, for some people, some heavy topics, but it really is quite simple, right? How are y'all feeling? If you are familiar with Erykah Badu, she has a song that says, "Fellas, how y'all feeling? Ladies, how y'all feeling? Fellas, y'all all right?" And so I love how she really just wanted to check the temperature. So that is going to be our first thing. We're going to check that temperature with our icebreaker. Then we're going to discuss, why are we here? What's being done about it? And how do we get better at it? It's really quite simple, but also very impactful if you pay attention. So buckle up, tune in, give yourself permission to stretch, to be able to grow, to learn. And if something that you hear or said or is offered by way of chat or even from the two of us that, you know, kind of doesn't rub you the right way, you want to assume goodwill. And we're going to grow from it so that we all can be better together. And eventually there will be a world where our young people won't need us in the way they do. That is what we are working. We are working so that we won't have jobs anymore. Right. But that means that the world is better. So now we can get into our icebreaker. It is called, Are You More Like? It is literally my favorite icebreaker to do. And just as an aside for professionals who are responsible for leading professional development, feel free to use this activity and shift it and adapt it to whatever fits, because it gives the opportunity to bring people from all walks of life, all experiences, all job categories together by really trying to get to the nuts and bolts of like shared understanding of things. So the way it works, it is a forced choice activity. It depends, it's not an answer. Both is not an answer. You have to pick one. You have to pick a side, right?
Make a decision.
So you have to make a decision. So I will ask you a question or read a sentence stem rather, and you'll be presented with two options. And in the chat, we want you to write your answer as to which one you are more like. I know you may feel like both of them. I know it may be nuanced and situational and contextual and all of the words that we like to use, but most often, which one are you more like? You put that in the chat. And if you're even feeling brave, tell me why as well. All right. Everybody good? First things first, as a sexuality professional, and even for some, depending on where you work, as a youth serving professional, whatever job category you have as a professional, are you more like a food pantry or a bank vault? Food pantry. Ooh, the chat is moving.
It's a lot of food pantry.
It's tons of food pantries. And so I'll catch a couple folks at food pantry, multiple hats worn at the same time. Yeah, lots and lots and lots and lots of food pantry. A couple bank vaults, okay? Anybody bank vault want to say why? Somebody said food pantry chaotic and there's something for everyone. Dr. Nikisha, which one would you say you were?
Oh, goodness. I would definitely say food pantry. I would say that I'm a food pantry. I love the description that someone said that, you know, it's something for everyone. But I also think about food pantry going in, providing support and help, especially for those who are in need. And that's one of the reasons why I do this work.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I see, and folks that are asking for me to elaborate, I see you. I'm not ignoring you, but we'll get to it. Next one, please. When having discussions about race, are you more like a barbed wire fence or a guardrail? When having discussions about race.
This is a good, yes.
Okay. And again, remember, if you're feeling brave or feel like sharing, go ahead and tell me why. This one is really mixed. You know, we're heavy food pantry, the first one. This one is a good, see, there we go. There's always one. Somebody said 90% of the time I'm a guardrail. Which one? That's good. Thank you. I'm activated in good ways, but also defensive in ways at times. It's really good. Maybe in reality, more like a barbed wire fence, thanks to that. Depending on the audience, you might get snagged by the convo. I love how you're committing to the theme. I love that. Yes. Thank you. All right. And next one. When tasked with having tough conversations with young people, and I'll also add about young people, right? When tasked with having tough conversations with and or about young people, are you a Ferris wheel or a roller coaster?
Oh, it's a mix with this one as well, Brittany.
Yeah, I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So I love that. I love the diversity Roller coaster because of my ADHD, Ferris wheel, trying to keep balance. Roller coaster, you have to keep the storytelling interesting. I resonate with that very much so. Ferris wheel, predictable but still fun. Love that. We love a dependable. We love someone's dependable wheel because it comes full circle and see new perspectives. I love that. Awesome. So what does this all mean, Brittany? Like, why are we doing this? Make it make sense for me. So this activity is one of those activities, as I said in the beginning, that helps you develop or really lean into or finding common ground. A lot of times these very charged conversations like sex and young people, racial equity, racial justice, and even go broader, politics, religion, money, and all manner of things in different spaces and places, there is a lot of debate and not necessarily dialogue happening. And what separates debates from dialogue is the lack of common ground. And so sometimes, because we all have come from different walks of life, different experiences, different goals, bringing an activity like this helps us to understand, for the most part, a Ferris wheel and a roller coaster are universally understood to be what they are, right? A food pantry and a bank vault, universally understood to be what they are. However, the application of what they are vary from person to person. And it helps to be better to better understand who you're talking to when you can find some common ground. So like some folks shared that as a sexuality professional, they're a food pantry, right? And I would say I was a food pantry as well, because whenever everybody who comes in for something different. I wear so many hats as a sexuality professional that sometimes some people are coming in for this thing, another time they're coming in for that thing. Sometimes they want a little bit of both. Sometimes they're there to just talk, right? They're not really coming for anything. They're just there, right? And so that helps people to see who I am in a better way, right? So this is, as a professional development tool, it helps to kind of level set, right? But it also really, as a having tough conversations tool, it's unconventional, but also one of those things that say, I really am willing to do whatever to understand what's going on with you so that I can be able to meet the need that you have. So thank you for indulging me. Thank you for indulging us and having that conversation or playing that game with us. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in. As we said, we are having this amazing transformation, trying to center racial justice in sex education. In order to be able to bring something to the center, you have to first know what it is, right? So what we have here is a definition of racial justice: the systematic, fair treatment of people of all races, resulting in equitable opportunities and outcomes for all, right? And so the important thing to understand first about racial justice is that there is the definition of it, there is the expression of it, and then there is the weight of it. Said another way, there is the intent of it, and then there's the impact of it, right? So systematic implies an intentional way of doing it. And then we could also add in the word systemic, because we also know that much of the weight of racial inequities are systemic problems. It's not while there are interpersonal and individual implications, the root of it is in the systems and the powers that be, right? Then we go down a little bit more to the next part, like you really got to exegete this text, right, and break it down. The treatment of, some of y'all are going to catch, some of y'all going to catch that, but that's all right. The treatment of people of all races, right? Treatment is not just in whether you speak or not. It's not just in whether you decide to walk, the stereotypical, I see, a young Black male in a hoodie coming down the street, so I'm going to walk across the other side of the street. I'm going to get another elevator. It is that, and, right, how you even regard people who are not like you, how different groups or races are regarded in the societal consciousness. Right? That's where the heart of racial justice is, and of people, meaning if you blink and breathe, then this is for you, right? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, we placate our individuals and we really are soft, if you will, to put it, nicely, on our approach to this effort. But it really is, and we want to select and be selective in who this applies to, right? We're almost in a place in our society where you have to earn the right to racial justice. But if that is the case, and there are criteria for this other than sheer humanity, then it's not just racial justice at all, right? And then we have the all races. All meaning that that's a very 3-letter word that people really struggle to comprehend. All meaning every single, not just the ones you know, not just the ones you encounter, not just the ones that you read about, not just the ones that you feel sorry for, not just the ones that have worked to become, not just the ones that are the sexy ones in the news right now, all, right? And then resulting in equitable opportunities. So what does that mean? Equitable, not equality, meaning what that group needs, when they need it, and how they need it. We can go back just for a second, please. What they need, how they need it, and the way that they need it, right? That's what equity is about. Equality says everybody's going to get the same thing, right? But that, for which we'll look at in the next slide, but that falls short because everybody doesn't need the same thing. Right. And so to suggest, and that's where we get the cookie cutter approach. We see that in our social service systems and our public welfare and public health systems. We see that in our schooling. We see that in our classrooms. We see that even in the most well-meaning of spaces, because, you know, capitalism, funding is what it is. We're going to try to, because we mean so well and we have these bleeding hearts, we want to give it to all the people as best as we can. So we're going to take this 100 and we want to give it to 100 people, so everybody's going to get $1. The 100 people, everybody's going to get $1, right? But there is a group who really needs $10. There is a group who has had an endowment that really, that dollar is a drop in their bucket, and they're just not even going to look at it for the next 3 fiscal years, right? And there's a group that could really make a shake with 50 cents and all of those things, but it really is not going to work when you look at the cookie cutter. And when you think about cookies and you roll out a good cookie dough, right? And you use the pretty little TJ Maxx cookie cutter that TikTok told you to get, and you make all of your cookies and you throw it away. There are some people who take the stuff that doesn't fit inside the cookie cutter and throw it in the trash. But we're wasting good supplies by ignoring what doesn't fit inside the box. And that is really the work of equity and racial justice, is seeing people for their worth and inherent value, even when they don't fit inside the design of what you, the group, the system, decide or have deemed, or the people in power have deemed as worthy of value. And so those are the equitable opportunities. And then the outcomes for all. And outcomes, which we'll learn a little bit later, are really directly impacted by the investments, right? There is the expectation that we have for people to show up, to perform, to produce in ways that are ignorant of the fact that what they don't have and what they have not been given, and really in worst cases, what they have been actively been kept from. Right. So racial justice says that we are going to create a world where you have whatever you need, whoever you are, however the way that you need it, so that where you will aspire, ascend, ascribe, whatever word that you use to understand what opportunity or outcome looks like, your life will be able to get to that place because you have what you need. Right? Okay. So next. All right, as we talked about this a bit, but equality versus equity, what's the difference, right? And what do we see here? We have a picture of a baseball game. I think that's a baseball game. I don't do sports. Looks like a baseball game.
Baseball game.
Looks like a baseball game. And as we talked about, right, we have the boxes. Everybody's standing on the box. Everybody have the same size, weight, capacity of the box, right? The fence is at the same height across everybody's chest, or at the space on everybody, and it is what it is, right? And you would think everybody got the same thing, the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunity. But equality falls short because needs are not equal. Provision can't be equal when needs are not equal, right? We see the purple shirted individual very clearly does not have everything that they need, right? We see the blue shirted individual has more than enough, right? And we see the red shirted individual making it, right? Just making it, right? But a world where racial justice is in our fiber, is not just something that is done, but something who we are. Surviving isn't enough. Thriving exists, right? And then we see on the other one where we talked about the culture of fairness and justice and center positive outcomes for groups and people with social, racial, cultural, histories of marginalization, right? And so if I'm reading that and you're able to see what the definition of it, but as I began with, there's the definition and there's the expression, right? Mm-hmm. The definition speaks to us cognitively, where the expression is how we show up and how we are able to live and be this thing, right? You see the blue shirted individual fully capable of all the things and seeing and enjoying, right? You see the red shirted individual having what they need. And then you see the blue shirted individual completely having what they need. And then look at even and now we could be putting a little bit on the text, but this is what I see. I don't know what you see, but I see on the left side, okay, this is a nice game. Oh, it's cute, right? On the right side or the equity side, I see people fully immersed, living at, colloquially the slang term, living their best life because they have what they need. And the weight of unrest and things that we see in our society, and particularly here in America, is the weight of people historically and generationally not having what they need. And then that shows up in how they walk around the world, how they engage with one another. That contributes to how we connect as what community even means, when really your whole personality and literally the quality of the air you breathe is in some cases determined by what you have access to. So we want to move to the place where people are thriving. And then what was not shown here, and eventually what we really want to get to, not equality, not equity, but liberation, where there's no boxes and no fences. Mm-hmm. We don't need the boxes because the fence is gone. Right? We don't need the additional supports because the inequities are gone. Right? We don't have a world, we're not in a world where people are going to the moon because they feel like it. And then people don't, in the same world where people don't have clean water to drink. Mm-hmm. Right? So we're moving to a world where generational wealth isn't a thing where generational poverty exists. Mm-hmm. That's what liberation looks like. That's what the amazing transformation will be. And I know we're talking about centering this in sex ed, but sex ed and human sexuality is the thing that connects us all. That is one of the very few aspects of human life that every single person has a piece of or experience with. All right, next one. So how do we move racial justice and moving beyond so that we can get to anti-racism, right? Racial justice is that thing that goes beyond that, and we are actively creating deliberate systems of support to achieve and sustain racial equity until we get to the place where those systems of support are no longer needed. There's proactive and preventative measures. What does that mean? We're not waiting until it happens to move. Right? We are using the historical knowledge that exists. We're using what we see. There's a framework by Dr. Barbara Love called Liberatory Consciousness. And it's the idea that we are aware of what is happening in our world. We take full acceptance and understanding of those inequities, the oppressions, and all the things. And we use that awareness and analysis to then apply it to the work that we're going to do, and use the ability to be both in a world where this is happening as we hope for the world where it could be better. But in order to do that, you have to first assess what's going on right now. What is happening, right? We are in a time where even having this conversation in this international conference with what is happening in our world, there's feelings about it, right? For some people, this conversation feels trivial. because of the weight of what they're carrying. But this also goes to show that there was something that should have been done years, decades, generations, eons ago, before the foundations of earth, that should have been done to keep this from happening, those proactive and preventative measures. Because when you are intervening, it's too late. Right? When you're intervening, it's too late. And again, I want to also continue to repeat that anti-racism, racial justice, equity, all of those things, liberation is something that you are and not something that you do. When we reduce it to checklist item things, when we reduce it to something that can be done, then we check it off and then we go on about our business. It is proactive, it is preventative, it is deliberate, it is perpetual. There's always an evaluation and assessment place. That is literally the lens through which you see life, through decision-making, through policy development, through provision, through support. Next. So how do we get there? How do we build on it? What do we do? We start with justice as the foundation, right? Justice is the foundation. And justice means, again, another really loaded word. Hollywood has taken some of our words and we have to reclaim it, right? We have to take it back. We have to take it out of the lights of Hollywood, the spin of, news media, right? And we have to take it back to the roots and the ground of the people who actually live it. And us as professionals, the people who are actually doing it, right? The foundation of social justice, racial justice, reproductive justice is grounded. And see, grounded, and I am one who loves words. Grounded speaks to an idea of connectedness, right? It speaks to an idea of security. When you are grounded in something, it is not flimsy, it's not tossed to and fro with the winds and the waves. It is secured in, right? A dedicated, purposeful pursuit of fairness, sound reason, rightfulness, and the use of power to uphold what is right. And we thank you, Sister Reach, for this definition. And really, that idea that it is proactive, it is preventative, it is perpetual, right? It is ongoing, it is purposeful. I can run these P's all day long, okay? and so we really need to understand what fairness means. Like, that's again that equity piece. What is fair? What is right? Right? What is just? And these are not just words that we throw around that sound good. Like, are we really adding meaning and seeing the people that these words impact? And then there's this idea of the use of power to uphold what is right. So for some of us who are privileged, how are you using your power and your privilege in the pursuit of fairness, in the pursuit of sound reasoning? How are you making space, right, for the people who have the things, right? How are you making sure that you're not adding additional burden to the people who are harmed and impacted, right? To the people in need? How are you making sure that you're not saying, teach me how to not hurt you, teach me how to not use you, teach me how to make sure that you have what you need, when historically, when the information is out there. Justice looks like doing that work for yourself and coming back and saying, here's what I see you need. Am I correct? Because there's nothing wrong with asking for a little assistance, but that's different between making me fully responsible for it, right? And then going to the place where we are building those opportunities, the equity building opportunities, and to correct the inequities, to correct the disparities, right? That derive from the years, centuries of these injustices, right? Understanding that sometimes the conversation isn't going to be had. Like, we have this idea of called in versus called out, right? Sometimes I'm not going to pull you to the side. As a Black woman, sometimes I can. Sometimes, my mama told me where you act up is where you get jacked up, right? And that just simply means sometimes you have to call it out right then and there. Right? Because there are some, when the disrespect, the disregard, when the disparity, the inequity, when that is loud in public, right? The correction needs to be that as well. Some things we can be in the room where it happened and have that conversation there. But if y'all caught that Hamilton reference, I love y'all. But sometimes we have to be right here where it is, because that shows the people and the powers that be that we mean it, that we mean business, that it is important to you. So if you are fighting, if you are championing, oh, that word been beat me up all day. If you have been championing equity, then that means that you are proud to be an equity champion, right? You understand that being an ally is not something that you can ascribe yourself. You can't sign up to be an ally. It is something that is assigned or ascribed to you from the people that you're saying that you are an ally for, right? You don't get and then also you were an ally today in this situation. It's not like, oh, I got not like my degree. I am a social worker now, here, therefore, and forevermore. But like my license, I got to get them CEUs regularly and always, not mandated reported training. All of those things have to keep going. When you are an ally, you have to keep showing up and recognize that in these different situations, you're still going to be there. You're continually creating those opportunities required to correct inequity. You're continually showing, you showed the young people in this class, in this semester, in this school year that you had it. What about next school year? What about when the language changes? Like you understand that intersex is the language now, and you got it, and you were the only one who knew that word in your school building. But next year, language ebbs and flows. Are you going to change this? Are you going to learn? Are you going to ask questions? Are you going to be that trusted adult, that askable adult for these young people? Are you going to hold your counterparts accountable? Are you going to call your co-privilege holders and be like, hey, we're not doing too good. We're a little bit trash. How can we not be trash anymore? Here's how. Right. All right. Next. So why is this conversation? Because I said we were talking about young people, asked about young people, but I was talking about a lot of adult things, right? Why is racial justice required in sex ed? Because of histories of racialized atrocities. That's first and foremost, right? And again, human sexuality is the thing that ties and binds us all together. And we can't have a conversation about humanity without the associated atrocities that are present, right? We can't have a conversation about worth and value and body image without acknowledging systemic racism. You can't have a conversation about risky sexual behavior without social determinants of health and health disparities and how those are connected to zip codes. And we can't have this conversation about creating equitable learning environments if we don't recognize that there are some school districts that don't even have textbooks, that there are some school districts that when the temperature gets to a certain place, that they're missing those days of school because there's no air, right? We can't have these conversations about, pregnancy, and yes, we have these beautiful programs of pregnant and parenting teens and young people and all that, but what about the world in which, and we're having these conversations about choice and Roe v. Wade and all those things, but then the elevating of human rights in a world where people are like, we're having a conversation about pro-choice, but are you pro-birth? Like, what about once they get here, what life will they have? We have to have that conversation as well. That's what shifting the narrative means. That's what addressing those implicit biases that we all have, right? None of us are exempt from the things. And with little things like understanding that microaggressions are not small, they're just subtle. Understanding that the macroaggressions there were laws like the Jim Crow laws and all those things that, made such things illegal are still happening in the year of our Lord 2023. Right. And to suggest that we are and to move the needle or pretend as if we move the needle so far ahead is an inequity in and of itself, because it is a invalidation of the very real lived experience, number one, of yourself, right? Because sometimes and that's what that liberatory consciousness is that we are being honest about what's going on. Sometimes we want to get ahead of that. We want to move forward, but we want to be, take our hands off it. And I'm, it is what it is. I'm so whole and healed. Yeah, but are you? Right? And then we have to do all of these to empower and center the people of color, our young people of color, because that is what it takes to dismantle the system of white supremacy. White supremacy is the problem. Always has been. And until we do something about it, always will be. Next. So when I've said this a lot, but when the professional is personal, again, sexuality is the thing that binds us all together. If you blink and breathe, we have human sexuality in common. That sometimes may feel like the only thing that we have in common, but it's there. Right. And so we have here this model that most of you may be familiar with is the Circles of Sexuality that was adapted from Dennis Daly, and having conversations with Dr. Nikisha and I, we've been working together for some years now, looking at these intersections, right? We created together this activity called Meet Me at the Crossroads, looking at the intersections of the social determinants of health and the circles of sexuality, because both of those things are great models and frameworks individually. But again, there's the definition, there's the expression, and then there's the experience. And a lot of times the application of these frameworks individually does not match the expression or the experience of the people who are most in need. And so we have sensuality, intimacy, sexual identity, sexual health and reproduction, sexualization. Yeah, you like that. Thank you, Leach. Sorry. Stay focused, Brittany. And so we, the advocates folks, we come in here and sometimes I forget where I am. So I appreciate that support. But we all come together. Yes, thank you. These are all these circles that really all for those who are unfamiliar, who all come together to make us who we are as sexual beings, right? And so some things like under sensuality, you have body image, you have, the human sexual response cycle, things like that. In intimacy, you have vulnerability, connection, like community engagement, relationships, sexual identity, you have gender roles, gender expression, orientation, all those things, sexual health and reproduction. We have the physical, like that's where the science lives. That's where what the parts and the participles of what you do with your body and, all the things, how they function, anatomy, physiology, all those things fall there. And then the sexualization, that's the icky parts. That's the assault, the rape, the, incest, the coercion, the seduction, the media, the poor media portrayals of Black and brown bodies and the hypersexualization of young Black girls and using weird terms like underage women, which is not a thing, using terms like non-consensual sex, which is not a thing, right? Sex is inherently consensual. Okay, stay focused, Brittany. So these all things come together to make us who we are, right? And why this is important when the professional is personal is because these things are important for you to understand as a sexuality professional, because you need to understand it as a human. These things impact you. And so it only is right that it would also impact your young person. So whether you need to assess what you need now or consider what you needed when you were their age, all of these things come together to make you who you are. And even in the middle of that circle, you also have values, right? Values and feelings and all the things. So again, sensuality, which as I went through all the circles, that's the definition, right? Then you have the values, that's the expression, like how all of these things come together, how you live it out, how you act it out, right? And then the experience are impacted by these two arrows on the side. The internal, bias, attitudes, beliefs, and the external, like social determinants of health, like your zip code, right? Like your, the 50% of what you experience in your health outcomes is linked directly to your zip code, your address, where you live at. Right? Then you have other things like access to transportation, healthy foods. Are you in a food desert? Whether you are, and the thing is that how does this connect? But what does sensuality have to do with a food desert? If you live in a food desert where there's no fresh fruit in all of I'm from Philadelphia, inner city Philadelphia. If all of your meals come from the corner store, right, with very little to no nutritional value, and this is what you're eating, this is what your diet. How is that not directly connected to your body image and how you see yourself?
Absolutely.
Right? How is it, we're talking about social determinants of health, where I think that currently, if I'm correct, the statistic is 1 in 4 Black girls will experience some sort of sexual coercion before their 18th birthday. How does that not directly connect to intimacy and your understanding of relationships and agency? These all come together. And it's difficult sometimes because we don't like to have not this group, because y'all are amazing, clearly.
Right.
But there are people who can't stand to have the conversation about sex and these sensuality and young people. Again, Hollywood, because you think sensuality, you think rose petals, candles, and slow music, and not just taking in the world through the senses that you have access to, which is essentially what sensuality is. So being able to see it for yourself in your own time, doing that introspection, making the professional personal, is how you're better able to equip to serve your young people. Next one. So what does that have to do with race, racism, and sexuality? We have the definition, right? Then we have the expression, and then there's the experience. Sensuality, things like body image, right? We get down deeper into the minutia of the thing, into the subgroups of it. Colorism, texturism, body size. There's a huge body positivity movement happening now. And then even in that, things like proportion privilege has infiltrated. Wherever there's positivity, without the right voices speaking up, negativity will come in, right? And it all is rooted in the Eurocentric beauty standards, which is why I say, what is the problem? White supremacy, right? Next. Intimacy, right? How does that connect to race and racism? When you have a young BIPOC student who has nowhere or very few places where they are said to or shown to be in any positive light, that then connects to feelings of self-doubt and shame, right? Vulnerability is not possible when being vulnerable means I'm weak. Being weak means I am going to be, at some point, I could be harmed. I have to be, and in some families in, single parent homes, young Black boys, you're the man of the house. You're 12. You're a little boy. Eat your dino bites, right? But no, because I have to be strong and don't cry, right? And then there's this idea, emotional intelligence is not a thing that is ascribed to these young people. That is how race and racism and sexuality come together. And the further we ignore the sexual health needs and sexual education needs of this group, the more we are creating humans that can't see beyond happy, sadness, or anger. Next. Sexual identity, gender roles. This is where rape culture lives. And we would think it would live in sexualization, but this is where rape culture lives. This is where hypermasculinity lives. This is where toxic masculinity lives. This is where the debate as to whether toxic femininity is a thing. This is where heteronormativity comes to wreak havoc here in this place, right? And because we do not give space for young people to be, this is where performance anxiety and perfectionism and the need to be liked, this is where that's birthed at. And to create young people who are old people or adult, not old people, that wasn't nice. Create grown folk. Create grown folk who are not able to stand on their own 2 feet and live their best life and be the whole fullest version of themselves because they were never able to do it at a younger age. And it is our BIPOC young people who get the worst end of that. Next. Here's where the social determinants of health come, right? When we think about social determinants of health, we talk, yes, you think about high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, all those big ones that make a lot of cancer, all the big ones that make a lot of money for big pharma, right? Not really, I'm not a super highly politicized person, but this thing is political, like a who know what, right? Right? And so when we think about the data and its impact on STIs, and we think about the who makes up more of the rates of gonorrhea and chlamydia, who is making up the new cases of HIV transmission, we look at the people beyond the numbers, we see, and if we recognize that we need to stop intervening and start being proactive, then we can recognize that this is where the work is. This is where the macro aggressions and the macro versions and the covert racism, right? This is where it came to take rest. Or the overt racism. This is where it came to take rest. This is where systemic racism plays out. And this is why it gets to be so pervasive, because we don't pay attention. We're not connecting the dots. I speak AAVE, I speak academia, and I also speak TikTok. And I want to know what's not clicking, Stephen. This is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Next one. And of course, as someone mentioned in the chat, and we said before, the adultification of children of color, leading to being over-sexualized and not feeling safe and being protected from sexual violence. And overly sexualized is one piece of it, but only sexualized is really the worst part of it. They are only seen as sexual beings, just in smaller bodies. And it's a lot of times, even in people from the culture, we have that white supremacy has even invaded that space where there is an idea of, young black girls being fast, right? And if you have hips, now somehow you must be, being promiscuous, right? Because heaven forbid, puberty could just do it. No, right? And there's a conversation, Dr. Lex Brown James made a statement when she said there is no young girl fast enough to catch an adult not interested in young girls. And that is so powerful to understand that there is a responsibility that we are placing on these young people of color, to protect themselves and keep them self-protected without the support and the education to do so. We know that young people who have access to comprehensive sex ed are less likely to engage in sexually rich behavior. We know that young people who know the medically accurate terms for their body parts are less likely to be victims of sexual assault. We know that, right? We know that young people who have trusted adults in their life, they have a safe place for their curiosity to land, will not experience these things. But the people who benefit off this continuing, they want to keep it quiet. And so you coming to AMAZE-Con, this Sex Ed Con, AMAZE conference, is saying that you're really ready to turn up the volume on this nonsense so that it won't be ignored anymore. Next. So in order for we to take everything that I just learned, and I know I said a lot, and I love to, hopefully, with a little gathering, but with love. I love y'all, right? In order to put this into practice in the classrooms, and whether you are directly in the classroom, whether you're in the district spaces, whether you're wherever young people are, is essentially a classroom. Right? Any place of learning. You want to meet the needs of the young people. Make sure that what you're offering is culturally relevant and accurate for representation, whether it is making sure that like AMAZE does, that the graphics match the face or people can see themselves in it, even down to the names and the musical references that you use, right? Young people have more buy-in when they see themselves. As professionals, we have more buy-in to the thing when we feel like we had a hand in it coming together, right? They need what we need. Again, so we want to limit our assumptions and interrupt the stereotypes, fight through that. And really and when those stereotypes come up, sit with that, recognize, okay, I am being pretty trash right now. And what I want to do about that, learn, grow. Allow young people to define themselves for themselves. Remember, resist the urge to cookie cut. Right? And then we want to be able to help to create just learning environments. The NEA has a framework for building equitable learning environments, and they have core essential action that is really key to doing just that. I encourage you all to check it out, make sure that you all get copies of what that looks like. It was, I think this was an honor to have this conversation with you all. And I think that now is the perfect time to transition to Dr. Floyd.
So thank you, Brittany. I mean, wow, you did a great job just kind of laying the framework of what racial justice is and how it relates to human sexuality, how it relates to the work that we do. And I think one thing that we could really kind of take from all of what you've said is that we have to be very intentional about our work, but also understand the difference between intention versus impact, right? And go from there. And so one way that we can really start to look at how to do this work, right? So it's one thing to know it, it's one thing to understand it, but how do we implement racial justice, particularly in our sex ed classrooms? And so because this is an AMAZE conference, let's bring in the AMAZE, right? So it's important to note that while AMAZE videos are not specific to racial justice, they can be used to introduce topics that center racial justice in our sex education lessons. So once again, nothing specific to racial justice, but you can find and be intentional about including racial justice in the work that you do. So let's take a look at what that could look like. The first video here is the sexuality and reproductive rights of people with disabilities. And if we could play that, and then we'll hop right into conversation after it's done.
There is no such thing as a perfect body. All people have different types of bodies and abilities. Some people even have invisible disabilities, which are disabilities we can't see by looking at a person, like chronic pain or anxiety, brain injuries, or autism spectrum disorders. People with disabilities live their lives in different ways from people without disabilities. Some of them might not share that they have a disability. Other people are proud of their disability and will make it visible to those around them. People with disabilities, however they identify, have the same rights, feelings, and wants as everyone else. This includes the desire to be in relationships and explore sexual and romantic feelings. If you're a person with a disability, you may have the same questions as your friends do about your body and puberty, and might be starting to develop sexual or romantic feelings towards others. Whatever you're feeling, know that it's natural and healthy, and you have the same right to these feelings as your friends and classmates. You also deserve the same access to information and health services. Your rights include choosing whether to be or not to be in relationships with others, deciding how to take care of your body when it goes through puberty or menstruates, communicating when and how people can touch you, and making decisions about birth control and pregnancy. Your body is yours, and even if you experience the world differently, you have a right to make the choices that are best for you.
Okay, so as we were talking earlier about why racial justice is important, and one of the things that was highlighted was making sure that we introduce the history of racial groups and people who've been marginalized, because it's important to the conversation. Believe it or not, and I'll share a quick story. I remember sitting in a meeting and the particular group, they received federal money to provide long-acting reversible contraceptives to a community of people. And during that conversation, someone brought up the need to talk about the history of eugenics in where I'm located in North Carolina, because it was very, very important to highlight that history, because there are people who still resonate with that history and the harm that it caused. And someone at the table made a comment, well, we don't have to worry about that. That happened years ago. But that was very short-sighted, because there were people in that room who had family members who had experienced being on the side of being harmed. And so just being thoughtful of how you have to have and bring history into conversations, particularly around sex, because there are so many different layers in why these things show up and how people feel, including how they show up in the social determinants. And so one of the things that you could definitely, or to do with this particular video about reproductive rights and people with disabilities, that being a springboard, you can introduce the history of eugenics in the US. You could introduce the impact of racism on reproductive rights. You could actually introduce conversations around the reproductive justice movement and its history and why it's important. You could talk about how the social determinants of health affect sexual health outcomes and how they often highlight systemic racism and racial inequities. And you could definitely talk about intersectionality and the impact of racial identity on access to sexual health information and services. And thinking about that, are there other topics that you can think of that would be a good fit? I encourage you to put them in the chat and let's see what you can think of. Anybody have any ideas? Racial disparities in maternal mortality. Absolutely. When we think about the Black maternal mortality rate and what's happening, it's very important that we have those conversations in our sex ed classrooms. Sex and mental health, absolutely. Birth control, history, and experimentation, absolutely. All of those lessons or topics can come up during the lesson. Access to healthcare and healthcare profiting, absolutely. All of these are wonderful ideas and springboards of having conversations with young people. Of course, they to be age appropriate, right? But to have these conversations using that particular video as a springboard. And even if you wanted to take a step further, there are additional supplemental lessons in Advocates 3R's curriculum that support some of these topics. And so they're under the supplemental lessons that specifically highlight racial justice. All right, next video. The next video is Sexuality, Faith, and Culture. So if you could play that.
You guys won't believe what I did this past weekend. I went to a Mafiki solo concert at the stadium. And then I had 8.5 force rolls. And then I got sick. It was so awesome.
Those guys rock. I was busy working on my science project all weekend.
Cool. How about you, Jabu?
I did my first Umkosi Umhlanga reed dance.
Nope. What's a reed dance?
Basically, it means I promised to wait to have sex until I'm married.
So it's like part of your culture?
Yeah, bo, it's a symbol of my decision to wait to have sex until I am married. It's what my culture teaches is the right thing to do.
People's attitudes about life are often guided by religious beliefs or based in family or cultural tradition, which help them make important decisions, including decisions about dating and sex.
But what if people don't agree with each other because their beliefs are different?
Different beliefs don't make one person right and another person wrong. It just makes them different. And that's okay. These beliefs can help people understand complex topics like whether and when to have sex, how to act based on gender, the use of birth control, and what to do if you get pregnant by mistake in a way that works for them personally.
And people with the same faith or culture often have different thoughts on these same issues. For example, some believe all sexual experiences should only happen between two people who are married. Others think it's okay for boys to have sex before marriage, but not for girls. And others think it's okay for people to have sex, as long as they really care about each other.
And people's beliefs can influence attitudes about gender and gender roles too. Some people may believe that men are meant to be the providers of the household, while women should be the main ones to care for the children. Others believe that raising kids should be shared equally among the adults in the family.
Ish, I know. Only a few days ago, my ma and Worm were having a serious discussion about abortion. They both had really different views.
Yania, some people believe that a god or higher power is the giver of life, so therefore abortion is a procedure that ends life. And others feel that only people who are pregnant have the right to choose what happens to their body, no matter what.
Plus, some people may choose to follow practices they were taught as a kid, while others may feel their beliefs change as they get older and are exposed to different things.
Wena, in the end, you have a right to your religious and cultural beliefs, even if others do not agree with them. Remember, it's important to respect others' beliefs and not judge them as long as they are not harmful to themselves or others.
I guess having different religions and cultural beliefs about life makes us all unique. Much like the members of Mafike Zolo. One can only dream of being as cool as them.
Okay, thank you. So that goes into what can be potential topics using this video. So we could talk about racial differences and how they influence body language and beauty standards and beauty ideals. We could talk about gender roles and identity and expression. It would be a perfect opportunity to talk about media literacy and how media plays a part in creating racial bias and stereotyping around race and faith in that intersection. We could talk about intersectionality and how people of color are not a monolith, right? And how there are variations among people. And definitely we could get into conversations about racial microaggressions and bias. And so once again, this is how you can take the tool of AMAZE and use it as springboards conversations into racial justice. Next slide, please. All right, so I often say this, Brittany brought it up, racial justice is not a checklist. We cannot check our way out of the centuries of oppression. It is a lens that has to be developed, right? And so what does that mean? It means that we have to be very critical in how we look at our curriculum. We have to analyze it thoroughly. We have to identify and support solutions that work to increase racial equity in our classrooms. We have to shift our choices and decision-making to make sure that we are looking and meeting the needs of all young people. And then we have to transform and heal ourselves. That means we have to be reflective and do the work. And this is not just for white folks. People of color also have internalized racism because we are all socialized in these racialized waters. So it means undoing and unlearning and constantly being reflective and being an anti-racist educator who applies a racial equity lens. And that is a way of being, and it is a way of thinking. And so we have to think about it from that perspective. Next slide, please. So one great way that you can work on increasing your knowledge and fine-tuning that racial justice lens is to take advantage of professional development opportunities that focus on racial justice. And Advocates for Youth, we have a wonderful free option for folks. And so we have a set of 10 modules, online modules, and they are 30 to 45 minutes that you can take at your own pace. And so they follow with the virtual professional development scenarios to highlight the skills within those modules. Again, so you can practice in the virtual world and kind of hone that skill before getting in front of young folks of color and one, being afraid or potentially causing harm, right? So this gives you the opportunity to, once again, go through these modules, think about or work on different topics that are specific to racial justice work, particularly when we're talking about sex ed, and then also work into develop and hone that skill. These modules support the 3 R's curriculum that is available on Advocates for Youth website. And it, once again, it is just really developed to help with creating that self-reflective work that needs to be done in order to fine-tune that racial justice lens that you have to work through. And so when we think about who the modules were developed for, although they were developed for K-12 health education teachers, there have been many of people who do not necessarily fit in that particular demographic who are taking advantage of this free learning opportunity. This set of modules were created by advocates in partnership with Sister Reach and Cindy Lee Alves, who is with the Ascension Institute. Next slide, please. So just quickly, and for the sake of time, I won't read everything off, but the modules are divided into 2. They're divided into our first phase, which are modules 1 through 5, and our second phase, which are modules 6 through 10. module or phase 1 includes topics of race and racism all the way through to reproductive justice in sex ed. And then modules 6 through 10, which make up phase 2, get really in the weeds, right? And start to talk about issues of intersectionality and bias, microaggressions, ultimately capping with strategies for dismantling white supremacy in the sex ed classroom. Next slide, please. So, want to be very, very clear that these modules just weren't thrown together. They are done with purpose and intent, right? And so the intent, 1, to be aligned with professional standards, 2, to make sure that we included a variety of different theoretical frameworks to help us build out the concepts that we focused on. And we did that by including a lot of different learning modalities. We understand that people learn in different ways. So there are different ways that we present this information through videos, through reflective pieces, through analyzing different types of scenarios and being able to respond to them. All of those things are included to help with the learning process of 1, learning about racial justice, applying it, thinking about it, etc. And so you can take it at absolutely no cost. And if you are a certified health education specialist, you can also receive those CHES credits at no cost. Next slide, please. And here, if you're interested in signing up for those free modules, you can go on Advocates for Youth website and put in racial justice modules, or you can click the link that Daniela put in our chat box. Thank you, Daniela. And that will take you to the site where you can register and begin your journey of looking at racial justice in sex ed. And so thank you so much. And I look forward to any questions that you may have.
Go, Dr. Nikisha, you so decent.
Yeah, we ready.
Yeah, we are ready for questions, comments, concerns. I know we just have a few minutes for a couple questions.
First, I would like to say thank you. Just thank you for all your brilliance and all the time and effort that you have put into this and resources that you have shared. I'm pretty sure all of us are still gagged and trying to gather ourselves. But we thank you so much. And we are ready for questions. We have a few of them. So I want to start off with the first question that popped up earlier in the presentation. That I am a cis white male who checks nearly every box of privilege. I am often asked if I understand and incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in my teaching. What are ways I can offer parents, faculty, students a process of confidence?
Can I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I will offer this and in love that you offering them the confidence is more a you thing than a them thing. And I get it's coming from a good place. You want to assure them that you understand, but there is a part of your lived experience that you won't ever understand, right? And so to show up for them, the confidence is built by you earning that, again, that ally accomplishmentship every day in the work that you do. So show up with the integrity that is due to them, the respect that is due to them, and do the work and the job and provide the research that you are assigned to do, and show up where you can, make space where you can, and continue to do it on an everyday basis. And they will either build that trust for you or grow the trust for you, or they won't, because there's understanding that there are, again, understanding that the systems that are in place, that distrust is deep seated, and your one person, your one role is not going to unearth centuries of distrust, but just continue to show up and do the things and make sure you resist the urge to make them responsible for you feeling better about what you're doing.
Yeah. And if I can add to that, I think it's also important to how are you also showing up outside of the classroom in those school spaces? So, for instance, are you calling out school policies that are racist, right? In the way that they're being implemented? Like if there are hair issues around young people wearing their hair in its natural state, and that is against school board policy, right? How are you showing up and actually making sure to highlight how those types of policy actually harm young people? And so there are so many different ways that you can also show allyship outside of just your classroom, but just in creating the school environment overall.
Thank you so much. And I resonate with everything you said. And we do not have time to answer all of the questions, so there's a possibility that we can do a Q&A session with Dr. Nikisha and Dr. Brittany after the conference. However, I think we have time for one more question. So I'm trying to see, there's so many of them. All right, I'm gonna go with this. It says, I teach primarily in public schools, which are foundationally unjust in many ways. I am not able to build long-term relationships with students. What are ways we can show students they matter and combat the injustice they face regularly in a short time?
If you mean in a short time, as in you only have a short time with them, then, that's, you have to work with what you have. As long as you don't meet in a short time, like as in quickly, because that's not going to happen. And it would be the same answer. I mean, for me, from my perspective, the same answer that's offered for the first one. You want to make sure that you keep showing up in the authentic and integral and equitable way that you are supposed to. And as Dr. Nikisha said, calling out the injustices when they're there, making space for your privilege, when they're there, speaking. There's something about speaking over speaking over and pouring into the life of a young person, reminding them of their inherent worth and value, and not gaslighting them out of their experiences, acknowledging that they feel what they feel, see what they see, carry what they carry, but also paint the picture of the world based on who they are, what they want, where they want to go, that is brighter than right now. Acknowledging and honoring the weight that you carry as well, and seeing what you can see in them to help them carry it where you can, and then empower them to carry it where they have to go along.
Absolutely. I second all of that.
Thank you so much.